Good evening and welcome to the Job Search Solution, the radio program where we talk about looking for a job, changing jobs, changing careers, hiring. And as always, we begin with a prayer. Dear God, grant us thy peace and thy mercy, thy will be done. And in just a few minutes, Rich Lavinsky is going to be with us talking about issues in the world of consulting. He's got a great topic that he wants to speak about this evening, and he's always extremely helpful. I wanted to discuss in this session the topic of everything you say in an interviewing situation, both as an employer as well as a candidate, can very well be taken out of context, and you never know how it's going to be interpreted. So everything you say in an interviewing situation on both sides of the desk, you have to realize that people are going to possibly read into it. They don't know you very well, and they don't have the context of what you're talking about. It happens all the time, but especially this week, it came up a number of times, and I'm going to go over them with you and say how they were interpreted. I had one candidate that was saying how difficult and challenging it was to work for a company that she had worked for. She implied that she didn't like the guy that she worked for very much at all, and she really didn't care for the company, and went on and on a little longer, then saying something like it was a challenging organization, but I learned a lot. The hiring authority heard that she didn't like the person that she worked for. She didn't do very well there. And he read all kind of in between the lines about her and making all kinds of assumptions that she didn't make very clear. I had a candidate who got a job offer, and he kept saying that he had to talk to his wife. He kept saying, I have to talk to the boss. I have to talk to the boss. I have to clear this with the boss. The employer ended up rescinding the offer. And one of the reasons was that he was concerned that the candidate was more concerned about what his wife was going to think about the situation, especially when he kept calling her the boss. Now, I've known this guy for about 15 years, and he's a decision maker himself, but the employer read into what the guy was saying. So you got to remember, whether you're a candidate or an employer, that people are going to read between the lines, and oftentimes they're going to extrapolate a meaning of what you say totally different than what you might be saying. You've got to, whatever you say, you've got to remember that how is this going to be interpreted? Now, the place you worked for might have been a very difficult place to work, but you have to couch it in the right way so that it doesn't come across that you didn't like where you were working, or you justified why you left the company. Anything you say in an interviewing situation can be interpreted in a number of different ways, and you've got to be sure that they are interpreted positively. And this is true for an employer. This is true for a candidate. A candidate, you guys don't know each other very well. So whatever you say, if it's taken out of context and you can't give in an half-hour, 2-hour, 3-hour, 5-hour interview, there's no way anybody can give context to the things you say and the things you talk about. I had an employer the other day that was talking about how lots of people in the organization weren't working very hard. And he even made the comment when the employer asked him how many people are working in his organization, he made a flippant comment like, well, half of them. And it, to the employer, And the hiring authority, it was funny, but to the candidate, it wasn't, because it looked to the candidate like it was a very difficult place to work and a big challenge to work there. And maybe people don't like working there. So you've got to ask yourself in every situation, the answers that you give, how can they be interpreted? And if you can't explain them clearly to either the hiring authority or to a candidate, then you need to remember that they can be taken out of context. And if you don't communicate clearly in your answers about what you're talking about, they may very well get misconstrued. I mentioned last week that people are looking for just as many reasons not to hire you as they are to hire you. And so when you, as a candidate, say something that really to you means something, but to them, they don't understand the context of it, then you put yourself in an awkward position, and the hiring authority is going to get the wrong idea. So think about that, not only as an employer, but as a candidate, especially as a candidate, but an employer too. You might be stating what the reality is, but you've got the context of what you're saying. And when you're not able to present that context to a candidate or an employer, it can be taken out of context and it can be misconstrued. And like the poor guy that kept saying he had to talk to his boss, one of the concerns the employer had was, is his wife the boss? Really? And it's not true. It just isn't true, but that's the way it was construed. So think about the small things you say that you don't think are all that important and how they are communicated to a prospective employer. All right, we're going to take a short break. Stay tuned. This is Tony Bashero with the Job Search Solution.